So today we continue our series on the meals that Jesus shared in the Gospel of Luke. And today we arrive at another dinner party. Yet again, Jesus ruffles people's feathers and makes them uncomfortable. WWJD indeed. So here is a reading from the Gospel according to Luke, chapter 14, verses 1 and 7 through 14. Hear now the word of the Lord. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, "Give this person your seat." Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, "Friend, move up to a better place." Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." May God bless the reading of this holy word today. Now, similar to last week's story, Jesus here is eating with a Pharisee, though the one this week seems to be more important than the last one, since Luke points out that this guy was a prominent Pharisee. And right off the bat, things at this dinner party are tense. The people at the dinner are watching Jesus closely, seeing what he will do or say, ready to judge and criticize him if he breaks any more church rules like he did at the dinner last week. But Jesus knows he's being watched, and he watches right back. He notices that everybody is picking the places of honor around the table. Everybody wants the best seat. It's like at a wedding reception that we might go to. When you walk to the door of the reception and you look at the seating chart to see which table you'll be at, and you see who else is at your table because you're hoping you want to sit with the fun people, right? I think we've all done that. But then you look at who's next to you and you think, why was I put at the weirdos table? What's up with that? Why would they think I would be a good fit for these? Oh no. Oops. And you look longingly at the fun folks at the fun tables. Oh well. This situation is kind of like that, but a lot more important, because their seating arrangement concern isn't about who they get to talk to or who they have to talk to. It's about how everyone else sees them. Where you sat back then sent a message to everybody about how important you were or not. The seats closest to the host were the places of honor for the most important people, the people who mattered, the people the host wanted to be seen with. And everybody at the party knows how the rankings work. So naturally, they are angling for a top spot, trying to get a seat closer to the head of the table. So Jesus watches all this shuffling around, this musical chairs. He's probably shaking his head. Ugh. and he tells a little parable about it. He says, look, when you go to a wedding reception, say, don't just plop down in the best seat, because if somebody more important comes, then the host has to stand you up in front of everybody and make you move down. It's like if we went to a wedding reception today and there were not assigned tables to sit at, and you sit down right next to the bride and groom, and you think this looks like a great seat right here at the front. So the bride and groom, what will they say when they walk up? What are you doing here, man? You can't sit here. This is for the bridal party. This is for the family. So you have to stand up in front of everyone, go find a seat in the back of the room at the weirdos table, while everyone looks at you, making the walk of shame, going, can you believe that guy? So Jesus says, don't do that. Instead, when you walk in, pick a bad seat. In fact, he says, pick the worst seat. That way, the bride and groom might see you and say, hey, what are you doing back here? You should come up and sit closer to us. So then you get to stand up in front of everybody, strut your stuff, because you're moving on up. And wouldn't that feel better than being embarrassed? Absolutely. Now, on the surface, this little parable sounds like a strategy, like Jesus is giving some dinner party advice. Okay, sit far back, so then you get noticed and move up. But if that's all this is, then Jesus is just teaching a sneakier way to get what people wanted all along. And it's not that. Now, this parable is a little sneaky, yes. But it's because Jesus is playing on their own egos to try and get them help get them to practice some humility for once, and to help them kind of understand his worldview, which is the complete opposite of their worldview, because Jesus' worldview is upside down. The last shall be first, the lowly will be the greatest, the proudest will be made low. It's all very backwards compared to everyone else's worldview. So people will need some help understanding it to kind of ease into it, take some baby steps into this Jesus worldview. So not being embarrassed in a social setting is at least a way for them to kind of get their minds around what he says in verse 11. All who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Okay, good information to know as a guest both at dinner parties on earth and also the heavenly banquet as well. But then Jesus shifts in verse 12 and says, oh, by the way, I want you to start making that happen now. Do what, Jesus? Indeed, he has some crazy instructions for people who would invite other people. He says that when you host a lunch or a dinner party, don't just invite your friends, your family, your rich neighbors. All those people are easy to be nice to. Everyone's nice to those people. But instead, invite the poor, the disabled, folks with various challenges, people who might not be able to throw fun dinner parties and invite you back. Then you will be blessed, Jesus says, because they can't repay you. So these final verses are kind of the next level in Jesus following. The first verses, 7 through 11, were about personal humility. Don't try to get the best for yourself, but be humble and content with wherever you are at the table. Then the next verses tell people to step up and take an active role in influencing who is even at the table. The first verses are about changing yourself. The second verses are about changing the room. None of the people in that room were interested in changing anything, though. They just enjoyed going to dinner parties and being seen. Ideally, being seen as really important and popular people. And they would just invite each other over for parties to be a part of their cool kids club. But that doesn't do the world any good. And Jesus wants to change the world. So, much like last week, he invites the question, what's the point? What's the point of being nice to people you already like? That's not impressive. Anybody can be nice to people they like. You should actually be nice to people you don't talk to. That's the next level Jesus way. It reminds me of what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? And I'll think about those verses when I hear someone say, oh, you know him, he's so nice, he'd give you the shirt off his back. And I know who they're talking about, and I think, well, yeah, but only for people he likes. And that's not very impressive. Everybody's nice to people they like. Even the pagans do that. And take this prominent Pharisee here. He's only inviting people he likes, or people he wants to impress, or just people he's comfortable with. And he definitely wouldn't invite any of the people Jesus suggests. They have no place meeting in his house, not in polite company. To think of inviting those kinds of people and having them come inside and do whatever it is they do? I don't think so. It would be like people today wanting to have something weird inside a church, like have a wrestling ring and a wrestling match inside a church. It's not appropriate to do, right? Or is it? Take this real-life example. The city of Bradford is in northern England, up in Yorkshire is where it is. And one of the churches in town is called Fountains Church. They do all the things you would expect a church to do. They worship, have Bible study, they have a food pantry. But they also started a new ministry that attracts over 100 people every week. That sounds pretty good, right? We would love to start a new ministry that attracted over 100 people every week. Well, there at Fountains Church in Bradford, Yorkshire, every Thursday night, they wrestle in the church, in a wrestling ring, in the church. They started a weekly bona fide wrestling program with folks in spandex slamming each other down in a canvas ring, the whole 9 yards. It was started as a way to provide direction and purpose for young people in the city who might have lost their way. So this genuine ministry was started by Gareth Thompson, a member of the church. He's a husband and father of 2, but when he's in the ring, he goes by the wrestling name, The Angel. That's him in the Pray, Eat, Wrestle, Repeat shirt, which I got to get me one of those. Hopefully, Father's Day present. And Gareth here started the wrestling ministry with folks in mind who had to navigate difficult childhoods and volatile family situations just like he did. As a child, Gareth was abused, kicked out of his house, had to live on the streets, sleeping in parks. He said, "The two things that helped get my life back on track were the church and wrestling." The driving force behind this ministry and training school, he said, is sharing that story to help others. Maybe someone who comes in the door hears something, and that's the start of their journey, because they've already been wrestling emotionally, wrestling with their demons, insecurities, their past, and their circumstances. So, Fountains Church offers training nights for people interested in learning and participating. Gareth said, you've got worship on Sunday, food pantry on Saturday, Bible study on Wednesday, and wrestling on Thursday. He said, it's a little bit of everything for everyone, and it's pretty awesome. Well said. One of the people helped by this ministry is Chris. There he is. Chris said, when I was younger, I was bullied relentlessly, and I suffered from severe depression, but I was welcomed here. Outsiders, weirdos, nerds, people who fall under any umbrella you find, why should they be pushed down because you don't like them? Everyone deserves to be happy. So after attending training for a few months, Chris was ready for the main event and wrestled in front of 160 people who came to the church to cheer him on. This ministry has brought so many people into the church that they've started doing baptisms for all the folks who began their spiritual journey of following Jesus through that ministry. So at one recent wrestling night, the church's pastor baptized 6 adults in one night. When the pastor started at the church, Gareth went up to her and said, "This may sound crazy, but I do professional wrestling, and I think we could use that for ministry." So, to the church's credit, they bought a wrestling ring and soon realized there might actually be a worshiping community that could come from it. One participant named Emma says a few years ago she had a mental breakdown, but being a part of the wrestling ministry gave her strength and confidence to keep going. She said, "I came from a chaotic, difficult childhood, but I come out of here feeling spiritually nourished, and I feel great about myself. It brings out that creative side of me that makes me feel truly alive." Gareth added, "What really excites me is we've got this community of people who are coming together to support each other through life's issues, whatever it throws at us, and it's just awesome." I think it sounds awesome too. It sounds like church. Does it also sound really weird to me? Yes. To think of the church buying a wrestling ring and having wrestling ministry on Thursdays. Yes, it sounds weird to me because I'm old and boring and I don't like new weird things. I admit it. But I do like more people following Jesus and getting baptized. I do like churches growing through neat ministries and people feeling welcomed and loved by God, their lives being transformed and starting new, abundant life. I do like that. Even though I would have thought, those people in a church, I don't know. But that story and our passage today should make us ask ourselves some questions. Who do we invite? Who is welcome? Who do we want to come? And given our verses today, what might Jesus say about it? Who would Jesus tell us to invite? In our story, Jesus lists specific examples of people who, back in that culture, would never have been invited. Society was more primitive back then, so nobody cared about any accessibility help for people with physical challenges. Either you were fine or nobody cared enough to help you. Thank goodness society has progressed a tiny bit since back then. So we try to have lots of things for people with any impairment or challenge, like handicapped parking spaces, ramps, assisted listening devices. And out in the world, you'll see on the news sign language interpreters, other language interpretation, all kinds of aids to help anybody with any need to fully participate. Because that is the Jesus way. If anybody has any challenge that would keep them from participating, the Jesus way says you do whatever you got to do to figure it out. Like in Luke chapter 5, when there was a man who was paralyzed. So his friends dug a hole through a roof to lower him down so he could see Jesus. They figured it out. Or during the pandemic here, when people couldn't come inside for worship like normal, we figured out how to record and share and live stream our services so that now worship is available to anybody, anywhere, at any time. And I'm very glad that it is. Because that kind of accessibility is a Jesus thing to think about. What do we have to do so that people who aren't able to participate can get access? Is there anybody who can't make it, who can't get here, who doesn't feel welcome? Then as Jesus followers, we need to figure it out. That's what keeps happening in these stories that we've read. There are over 5,000 hungry people. We'll start feeding them. Figure it out, Jesus said. Tax collectors aren't accepted. Well, Jesus says, I'm going to hang out with them and invite one to be a disciple, so you better figure it out. And when we do, Jesus also says that we'll be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Nice. That sounds good. Like a little extra jewel in our crown in heaven, right? Yeah, but although, of course, we shouldn't do something good just because we will get something in return. But Jesus knows his audience here. It's people who are self-centered and not mature. So they only do things if it benefits them. That's why he was kind of sneaky about getting them started practicing humility earlier. And now he's being sneaky to get them started being more inclusive, expanding the welcome. Don't worry, you'll be blessed and repaid at the resurrection. Doesn't that make you want to be nice now? Yeah? Baby steps. We shouldn't do something good just because of what we'll get in return. But yeah, showing that kind of invitation brings eternal heavenly blessings because it is the work of God. However, I think that when people do it, they realize some surprise blessings in the here and now. When there's more folks at the table and the room starts to look a little more like the kingdom of heaven, it includes all the weirdest kinds of people, like you and me, but that is amazing grace indeed. And it is what heaven looks like. Let us pray. Oh God, We confess that too often we've only thought about how we look, getting more for ourselves. We've been too selfish, God. We know it, and you know it. So thank you for your grace that forgives even that self-centeredness. We receive your grace today. We receive your forgiveness for our shortcomings, and we invite your Holy Spirit to convict us and empower us to follow the way of your Son, to help us take those next steps in the way of Jesus, to invite all people to receive his grace and your love like we have. Amen.